I always thought my Uncle Ray was mostly full of it. The guy collected odd jobs and half-finished stories like other people collected stamps. One Thanksgiving he said he'd met Johnny Cash in a gas station restroom. Another year he swore he'd once owned a racehorse that retired early due to emotional issues. So when he passed and left me an old suitcase, I expected something goofy. Maybe a stack of postcards or a jar of pennies from the 1970s. The suitcase showed up 2 weeks after the funeral, dropped off by a courier who looked confused that I was signing for something held together with a belt. The leather was cracked and dry, the brass buckles green with age. My name was taped onto the handle in Uncle Ray's blocky handwriting. I remember just holding it for a moment, feeling this weird heaviness creep up my arms. Not the emotional kind, just literal weight. Whatever was inside felt dense, like metal. I didn't open it right away. I actually left it by the front door overnight because, I don't know, I felt like something in there was going to shift my life in a direction I wasn't prepared for. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. There was this quiet pressure, like the suitcase was waiting for me. The next morning, I finally cracked it open. Dust puffed up in my face, smelling like old books and the back room of a pawn shop. Inside were layers of folded cloth, maybe an old army blanket, and beneath that, a stack of papers held together with a fraying ribbon. On top was a letter with my name again, this time written shakier. I unfolded it carefully. Uncle Ray's handwriting wandered across the page like it had to fight for every inch. He said he was sorry for drifting in and out of everyone's lives, that he'd made more mistakes than he could remember, and that he'd spent the last few years trying to set one final thing right. "I don't have much left," he wrote, "but what I do have should be yours." Under the letter was a thick document stamped by a law firm I'd never heard of. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. There were maps, parcel numbers, survey diagrams with squiggly lines and measurements. It took me a full minute before my brain finally clicked into gear and realized what the title page said. Transfer of Mineral and Surface Rights, Pine Hollow Tract. I muttered, "No way," out loud, even though nobody was home. I'd heard of Pine Hollow before. Everyone in our town had. It was a stretch of undeveloped land outside of town. Quiet, hilly, mostly trees. But rumors floated around every few years about developers circling it because of some rare mineral deposits or shale under the surface. Nobody ever knew who owned it, though. The property records had been a mess since the 1940s. But according to the document in my hands, I owned it now. I flipped through page after page, my heartbeat thudding louder each time. The last sheet included an updated assessment. I stopped breathing for a second when I saw the number. I don't want to write it here, but let's just say I've never seen that many zeros outside of a movie. For a long moment, I just sat there on my living room floor, the suitcase open beside me, the sunlight creeping across the rug like it was sneaking up to see what I'd found. It didn't feel real. It also didn't feel like a blessing. More like I'd opened a door to a room I didn't know existed, and something huge was waiting inside. The last line of Uncle Ray's letter kept echoing in my head. If you're reading this, then it means the time finally came for someone to do the right thing. Just be careful who you trust. I should have listened to that part more closely, because what came next, that was where everything started to crack. I didn't do anything dramatic at first. I didn't quit my job or buy a car or tell anyone except my best friend, Mark. Mostly because I was trying not to freak out. The documents felt too surreal. Like maybe I'd misread something and the universe was about to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Sorry, wrong guy." But 2 days after I found the suitcase, the first phone call came. A woman with a clipped, professional voice introduced herself as Lydia Crane from Norwell Development. She talked like she already knew I'd been expecting her. Said she understood I was now the primary rights holder of the Pine Hollow Tract and that her company had a very competitive offer prepared. I hadn't told anyone outside of Mark. Hell, I hadn't even started the process of transferring anything officially yet. The documents were still sitting on my coffee table. When I asked how she got my number, she paused just a hair too long. "It's public record," she said. It wasn't. After I hung up, I called Mark and half-joked that maybe someone had bugged Uncle Ray's suitcase. He didn't laugh. Instead, he said something that made the back of my neck prickle. Man, if this land is really worth what you said, people have probably been waiting decades for the owner to show their face. By the next morning, my inbox had 8 unread messages from different companies. Half of them politely asked to discuss acquisition options. The other half sounded like they were racing each other to get to me first. I started feeling less like a person and more like a lottery ticket somebody dropped on the sidewalk. But the real trouble began when my cousin Janet reached out. She and I hadn't talked in 4 years. Not since she borrowed money from my mom and never paid it back. She texted me out of nowhere. "Hey stranger, heard the news. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone for a long time, wondering who could have possibly told her. When I finally called her, she jumped right into it. No warm-up, no condolences about Uncle Ray. "Listen," she said, "I don't know what he told you, but that land? It was supposed to stay in the family." "It did stay in the family," I said. "He left it to me." She made this little scoffing sound, the kind she used when she thought someone was too dumb to understand something obvious. "No, you don't get it. I took care of Ray. I drove him to appointments, brought him groceries. I was there way more than you were. If anyone deserved that land..." I cut her off. "Did Ray ever tell you he was giving it to you?" Silence. Then, "He hinted." That word, hinted, told me everything. At the end of the call, she dropped a line that would come back to bite me later. "I'm just saying, don't be surprised if other people step forward. Ray made a lot of promises." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something larger than me was starting to shift. I dug back into the suitcase, searching for any clue about why Ray would have left something so massive to me and not to anyone else. At the bottom, tucked in an envelope, was a faded photograph of Ray standing with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, stern-looking, wearing work clothes. On the back, in Ray's shaky writing, were 3 words. He knew everything. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, someone knocked on my door. Not a delivery driver, not a neighbor. A guy in a tailored jacket with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He introduced himself as Mason, no last name given, and said he represented interests invested in the future of Pine Hollow. I told him I wasn't selling. He didn't flinch. Everyone sells. The question is whether they sell early or late. He glanced past me into the apartment, like he was checking how much of my life he could take apart. "You should know you weren't the only one Ray spoke to, and not everyone is as reasonable." I shut the door on him, but the damage was done. I stood there with my hand on the knob, my heartbeat climbing into my throat. For the first time since opening the suitcase, I felt afraid. Not of the land, not of the money, but of the people who suddenly cared so much about both. That night, Mark came over with takeout. I told him everything, Mason, the calls, the photograph. He listened quietly, picking at his food. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "You need to get ahead of this before someone else decides to do it for you." "Get ahead how?" I asked. He hesitated. "Start by finding out who that man in the photo is. If he knew everything, that probably includes why Ray didn't trust anyone else." I agreed. It sounded like the first solid step I'd heard all week. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that the person I trusted most was already keeping something from me. And the first hint of that betrayal was sitting right there on my kitchen table. I just didn't see it yet. I started with the name scribbled on the back of another document in the suitcase. Barely legible, like Ray had written it while his hand was shaking. Harold Keene. With some digging online and a few awkward phone calls to historical societies, I found a living relative. His daughter, Miriam, who ran a tiny antiques shop 2 towns over. She agreed to meet after I told her I had something that might belong to her father. When I showed her the photograph, her face softened. "Yeah," she said, tracing the outline of her father's jacket. "That's him. He worked with the surveyors out in Pine Hollow a long time ago." "Did he know Ray?" I asked. She gave me a look that said my father knew everyone. But then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. They were friends in their own way. Both of them kept secrets. I told her about the land transfer, the sudden attention from developers, everything except the part where I was starting to unravel. She listened without interrupting, then disappeared behind the counter and came back with a small metal box. She set it gently between us. "My father left Ray something once," she said, "and he left me the rest. I think you should have it." Inside the box was a stack of notes. Old, yellowing pages filled with numbers, coordinates, and rough sketches of Pine Hollow. And there, on the top sheet, circled twice in red pencil, were the words, "Cave, do not disclose." Cold feeling crept over me. "What cave?" Miriam shook her head. "He never said. Only that some things weren't meant for public hands." I thanked her and left with the box. As soon as I got back to my car, I called Mark. He picked up on the first ring like he'd been waiting. "Dude," I said, breathless. "There might be something hidden on the property. Something Ray and this guy Harold kept quiet." Mark was silent for a moment. "Okay. But maybe don't go running off into the woods chasing rumors." "I'm not. I'm just saying it makes sense why everyone's circling. They might know something big is there." Another pause. "Yeah, maybe." His voice sounded strange. Tight. Almost guilty. But I brushed it off. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. That night, as I spread the notes across my kitchen table, I noticed something odd. Some of the pages weren't as old as the others. Crisp edges, modern ink, and one of them, one with a copied map of Pine Hollow, had handwriting I recognized. Mark's. It hit me like a gut punch. Same slanted M's. Same loopy lowercase g's. At first I told myself maybe he'd helped Ray organize things. Maybe Ray had trusted him too. But then I saw the date in the corner just last year. Mark had been involved long before the suitcase ever appeared. Before I could make sense of it, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "You home?" I didn't answer. I turned off the lights and waited. 5 minutes later, headlights swept across my living room. A car door slammed. Footsteps approached. He knocked once. "Hey, open up. We need to talk." I stayed frozen behind the door. After a long silence, he sighed. "Look, I'm not the bad guy here. Ray told me about the land before he died. He wanted me to help you. But once he passed, other people came asking questions. People you don't want to piss off. I tried to keep them away, but you weren't exactly low profile." I almost laughed. Bitter, disbelieving. I hadn't been low profile. I hadn't told anyone besides him. He kept talking through the door. "Just don't do anything stupid with that land. There are deals already in motion. You can walk away with more money than you'll ever need. But if you start poking around caves or whatever, these people won't play nice." My throat tightened. "Who are these people, Mark?" He hesitated. "Developers, investors, some guys who don't really have titles. They knew Ray was dying, and they knew whoever inherited the land would be inexperienced. They figured it'd be easy." "And you were working with them?" "No, not with them. Just trying to keep the peace." His voice cracked. "I was going to tell you, I swear." I stepped away from the door. I didn't recognize him anymore. Not the guy who used to split gas station sandwiches with me or stay up playing video games until sunrise. This wasn't keeping the peace. This was betrayal dressed up like a favor. When he finally left, I sank onto the floor, surrounded by Harold's notes and maps and warnings. I realized the truth wasn't buried in Pine Hollow. It was buried in the people around me. Ray hadn't left me the land to make me rich. He'd left it to me because he didn't trust anyone else to keep it from being swallowed alive. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. Someone completely outside my town. Someone none of the developers could influence. I filed to secure the deed, block any premature claims, and open an investigation into harassment attempts. It was the first time in weeks that I felt like I was steering my own life again. I didn't talk to Mark after that. I heard through mutual friends that he moved, abruptly, without saying goodbye. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he was scared of the people he'd gotten too close to. I don't know. As for the land, I still own it. Haven't sold a single acre. Haven't explored the coordinates on those old maps either, at least not yet. Some days I think I will. Some days I think Ray meant for the cave to stay quiet forever. But every time I pass the old suitcase where I keep the papers now, I hear his warning in my head. Just be careful who you trust. I learned that part the hardest way.